Recently, some friends of ours who've been living on the property with us, their kids asked to come down and play. I don't force my children to play with anybody they don't want to play with. I let them make the decision for themselves. But this particular time, our oldest two, Theo and Uriah, said, "Hey, we actually don't want to play with one of the kids." I was like, "Okay, explain to me why you don't want to play with one of the boys." You know what I'm saying? And so they were talking to me about some of the things that the young man was saying. I just listened. I let him vent. You know what I mean? I'm not going to put out everything that the kid was saying, but there was a lot of stuff that we don't say to our children. We don't allow them to speak to each other that way. If someone speaks to them that way, it's a red flag for us. So the fact that they had this, person in their community who was treating them worse than they would treat each other, or even, how they treat themselves or whatever, it was a cause for concern. I said, okay, you guys don't have to play with them. I'm not going to force you guys to play with somebody you don't want to play with, or be around somebody you don't want to be around. Because I remember as a kid what that was like for me when my mom really wanted to hang out with somebody, and just because she had proximity to them, I was automatically their friend, and I didn't even like the person. You know what I'm saying? I just had to play with them because that was the companion my mother chose for me. So I refused to do that for my children. I let them know that they had a right to say no. But I said, you don't have a right to believe those things and not tell the person how you feel. So it's going to be an awkward moment, and we're going to sit down, and you're going to tell that kid how what he said made you feel. Although I do teach my kids that what other people say shouldn't make them feel anything, I do want to reiterate that they do have a right to listen to their own nervous system, and if they feel unsafe or they feel uneasy, they don't got to be in that space. So I said, you're going to have to tell them that. So I brought the father down, who's a good friend of mine. The young man came, and my two oldest, and myself, and I basically had a conversation with the young man in front of his dad, and I said, hey, we want to hang out with you. We like having you around, but from my experience, what I've been hearing is that you've been saying these things, and some of these things, really hurt my heart to hear, but also it hurt my heart that my children would hear it and they would receive it. You know what I'm saying? So I made sure I let them know, hey, what you said was inappropriate, and I don't force my children to be in community they don't want to be around. You know what I mean? And you did ask to come down here and play, and these two said no. And what I told you was the reasons why, but I want to give you an opportunity to speak up for yourself, And it's sounding a lot more harsher how I'm saying it now as I'm thinking about it, but I listened to him. There was some tears formed, and there was some crying, and the dad got to chime in, and my sons got to chime in and tell their how they felt about the whole situation. But I realized that I'm setting a standard for how I expect my children to treat each other, how I expect other people to treat them when they come in. The fact that I love their father, and I'm that's my homie. I'm protecting this relationship that we have together, in that safe place, by even telling the child, hey, I see you, I understand that you've been saying these things. It's not appropriate, and we're not going to stand for it. We want you to be here, but if your character and your conduct doesn't fit with how you're supposed to treat people, you're not going to be able to come over here no more. Straight up. And I was standing on that. You know what I'm saying? And the dad's standing on that. And the boys are sitting there listening to everything, but they're also trying to help the kid process, because it's a very emotional moment. But I had to let him know, hey, if my children were treating you that way, they would be on the outskirts as well, right? I don't allow them to treat people like that too. So if that happens to you, I need you to tell me. What I told the young man after this, and where I kind of ended the conversation, is that, as a father, as a dad, my responsibility is to protect my children, right? Not only that, is that I want my children to trust me. But if I keep allowing you, right, around, and your behavior isn't appropriate, then essentially I'm going to force them to be in a relationship they don't want to be in, and they're going to think they can't trust me. And, their trust with me is worth more than your tears. unfortunately. You know what I'm saying? It's worth more than this community that we're building. It's worth more than the friendships. Their trust with me is extremely important. It's very high because I know what it's like to be a kid that doesn't trust his parent. You know what I mean? Like, I know what it's like, and I refuse to allow that generational curse to continue.